and welcome to All There Is. I'm your host, Kelly Bargabas. Thanks for tuning in today. Welcome to Season 4 of this podcast. It is 2025, and I'm excited that it's a new year. 2024 was a tough year for me and my family. There was a lot going on, and I really thought 2025 was going to be better. I didn't make any New Year's resolutions, but I had this new scripture, this new mantra that was going to define my year, and I was ready for it. And it was, "Arise, shine, for your light is come, and the glory of the Lord is risen upon you." And I thought, yes, that's what I need in 2025. I need some light. I need some arising. I need to shake some things off and do some things different, and I just wanted to have more fun. And so far, it is January 25th, and 2025 is proving to be a pretty tough year so far. So, this podcast is all about the human experience. And the human experience, as you all know, is full of everything, right? Light, dark, joy, sadness, laughter, tears, worry, work. I mean, it's all of that. And lately, as my dad has been facing some really life-threatening health challenges, myself and my siblings and my mom, we've all been experiencing that range of human experience on a daily basis. Every day holds all those things. I'm sure I'll have a really upbeat, positive podcast episode soon, maybe with my new theme of Arise, Shine, for your light has come. But today, I'm going to share something else. I'm pretty confident that you have probably experienced something similar, that you'll be able to relate, or you will someday. And it's called mountain movers. It is 12:30 a.m. on a January night, and 9 floors below me, someone is operating a small loader, moving snow from an empty parking lot. He pushes forward, scraping the blacktop clean, and then travels to the fence on the west side and flips the bucket to dump his load over the side hill. The fresh layer of white moguls tell that he's already done this many times tonight. His work of getting the lot clear and ready for the movers and shakers of the business world, those moving up in their careers, arriving early to get a parking spot in the freshly cleared lot, is almost complete. The scene may not earn a second glance from most people, but I remember when the 84-year-old man lying in the hospital bed behind me while I keep watch used to do this very same work. My dad was a heavy equipment operator. Bulldozer was his specialty, but he had loaders and backhoes and dump trucks too. And in the winter in central New York, when there was no dirt work to be had, in order to keep the equipment busy and the bills paid, he'd move snow in the middle of the night. While the rest of us stayed in our warm beds, sleeping as we should be, he'd be moving mountains of snow, using his loader to fill his dump truck to take the snow somewhere else. He used to move mountains of snow, and I used to be one of the movers and shakers, showing up while it was still dark, getting to the office before anyone else, or so my boss could see my work ethic, or because I was just ambitious and a hard worker and was excited to see what opportunities the day would bring. When we were in the throes of those late nights and early mornings working in the dark, were we thinking that someday this would all end? That we would move on? That someone someday would take our place? I doubt it. No one does. I'm sure my dad sat in the seat of his loader thinking about what he had to do the next day, wondering how he was going to catch up on shut-eye, maybe thinking about my mom or the Dallas Cowboys, or maybe he was dreaming of doing something different with his life, answering another call. Perhaps he was wondering if he would ever serve God as a pastor. Just like I wasn't thinking yet about my later years, when things would shift and I would become the mentor instead of the mentee, the teacher instead of the student, the oldest in the room, not the youngest. I would be the leader. I would become cool not because I was young and brilliant beyond my years, but cool because I'm older and still relevant and working just as hard as I ever did. And now the movers and shakers look up to me. We never see it coming. That's how life is, as it should be. We were all caught off guard with the first brain bleed on July 17th. We didn't see it coming. My mother was waiting until a decent hour to call one of us to report on his bizarre behavior. His oldest friend had been killed the day before in a freak accident, so the fact that he had a restless night's sleep was explainable. But then, my dad didn't understand what to do with the garbage cans, a task he'd done every week his entire adult life. He was out of it, lost, seemed tipsy, almost drunk. I had called my mother a little earlier than usual that day, and when I heard all of this, I told her to call my sister, Patty, the nurse. Within the hour, I had scooped him up and was on the way to the ER. When the CT results came in, the group chat started. Our familial bonds run deep, and so does the sibling bickering and jockeying for pole position. But man, we shine in a crisis. We show up, we click, we get things done, especially when one of us is down. So after a 5-day hospital stay, we got him home and began physical, occupational, and speech therapy. It was a whirlwind of work to be done. Appointments, meals, coverage, home health aides, making sure my mom wasn't overburdened or overwhelmed by it all. The injury to his brain seemed to tear down the veil, unhinged memories. The timeline of his life was fluid. He could be 4 years old and 84 years old in a 60-second span, and it all seemed so real to him. Years of protective behaviors were gone. He seemed to have one foot in both worlds, the natural and the supernatural. The barrier had been removed. God was closer than he'd ever been. Last summer, while my dad was healing, we spent a lot of time sitting on the deck, enjoying the breezy sunshine, the smell of grass, the full trees and flower beds. On one of these days, he started crying. "Dad, what's wrong? Why are you crying?" I asked. "I just feel like all this is going to end," he said. "All what?" I asked, already dreading the answer. He looked out and swept his arm from left to right. "This." I grabbed his hand and held on. Yes, me too, I thought. But my dad defied the odds. He was strong. He continued healing. He would not give up. He was getting better. A few weeks ago on January 4th, almost 6 months after the first brain bleed, my husband and I went to my parents' house to cook pizza, play pitch, and hang out with them. It was the perfect night. I told anyone who would listen, "You'd never know Dad had a stroke." Teamed up with my husband against my mother and I, my dad still knew how to follow trump and win the hand with high or low or the jack. Those months of occupational therapy and speech had paid off. To finish the night, we moved to the living room to watch an Alan Jackson show at the Grand Ole Opry, where he debuted his album of old gospel hymns, Precious Memories. We sang together, we cried. My dad crawled on the floor to my mother's chair and wept at her feet with his arms raised in the air, singing his heart out. Now, tonight, as he's sleeping off the second brain bleed in 6 months, the man who used to move mountains of snow in the dark so retailers and offices could be open for business, now needs mountain-moving faith for a miracle. Faith used to be his specialty, and ironically enough, so was healing. After more than 30 years with heavy equipment, my dad did become a pastor. His full-time job for the next 20 years or so was to marry those who'd fallen in love, bury those who had succumbed to death, and dedicate the babies born so they'd be blessed. He visited the lonely, prayed for the sick, encouraged the hopeless, counseled the lost, and most of all, loved without fail. I was angry, pissed. How could God let this happen? To him, of all people, who had done so much for others in the name of God. On one particularly bad day, I asked my dad if he ever got mad at God. He considered my question, looked up, shook his head. "No, I don't. I have questions for him, lots of questions, but I don't get mad at God." So maybe it's me that needs to muster up that faith so I can hear my Father's voice say, "Hi, beautiful," one more time, or see his face light up when he looks at my mom, or hear him laugh at one of his own jokes, or rave about the mashed potatoes as if it's his first time ever eating them. The truth is, moving mountains, whether it's snow or faith or careers, requires youthful strength. And whether we admit it or not, strength fades. Our physical bodies absorb the toll of this human experience, and no matter how much we work out and biohack and eat the latest diet craze or pop pharmaceuticals, our bodies burn out or fade away, sometimes both. In the profound words of Neil Young, It's better to burn out than it is to rust. Hey, hey, my. But the truth is, we don't really get to decide. I had been watching my dad fade away well before the first hemorrhagic stroke hit him. We had to convince him to hire someone to plow the driveway. I have a snowblower. It's easy, he'd say. Just this past summer, after several years of negotiating, I finally forced the issue of hiring someone to do the lawn. That was hard for him and me. After years of being a heavy equipment operator, riding around on the seat of any piece of equipment was in his DNA. It was in his blood. And while bulldozers and backhoes and loaders were long gone, he still had his John Deere riding lawnmower. It was his happy place. But he also overdid it. Mowed too often in 90-degree weather, raked the extra grass and the leaves and picked them all up and put them in bags and dragged them out to the curb. He killed his back. It was too much for him. But the reality of not being able to do that anymore was devastating to him. He was angry about it. We sat at his dining room table while I tried to convince him that it was time for him to relax, to enjoy his retirement, to let the young ones take over and do the back-breaking hard work. And all he could do was look at me in desperation and say, "You mean to tell me I am never going to mow my lawn again?" I left his home in tears that day, heartbroken. I felt like I was breaking his heart, taking away this thing that he loved in order to save his life, to save his back, to save his heart. Just the summer before, he had fallen off a ladder washing windows. His balance had been bad for a few years because of the neuropathy in his feet, and he promised us, me and my sisters, that he would not use ladders anymore. And then one day, he just had to wash the windows in the back of the house. And on the last one, he lost his footing and he fell. My mother heard it happen and found him on the ground. Had to drag him back to the front of the house and get him inside. He tore the ligament in his right leg that connected his quad to his kneecap, I think. He had to have surgery and was in a cast for 6 or 8 weeks. And after that, we took all the ladders out of the house. We always knew that driving would end at some point, but he actually was driving until his first stroke last July. Watching someone you love, watching a man you love, fade away is hard. It is not for the faint of heart. It is heartbreaking. For women, aging is difficult, especially in our youth and beauty-obsessed culture. When you become an older woman, it's hard to not feel invisible, to feel ugly, like your time has passed, like nobody looks at you anymore. You have no value if you're not pretty, if you're not beautiful, if you're not young. And we talk a lot about that in our culture. I don't know that we talk as much about how difficult it is for men to age and slowly lose everything that made them feel useful, especially these men of a certain generation who learned that what they did and what they could do with their hands and the work and the manual labor was what made them valuable. That's how it was for my dad. That's how he earned money. That's how he paid bills. That's how he raised his family. That's who he was. And as those things have faded away in these last years, and he's had to slowly loosen his grip on those things, he slowly lost his grip on his life, on the things that made him feel happy and useful and valuable. And so tonight, as he sleeps, I'll whisper in his ear that those things may have served you for a time, but they were never you. They were never you. You don't have to work for your worth. You were told it was your strength, your force, your toughness that made you a man. It's not true. It never was. The man you are is in your faith, your children that you raised, the good that you did for others that will live on when your strength fades, when your balance is no more, when you feel like you're no longer a man. Know that you are. You were told that men are strong and fast, men fix and work and cut and move, and when you were unable to do those things anymore, you thought you lost yourself. But you don't have to be physically strong or brave or brute. Those things don't define you. They never did. You are a son, a brother, a husband, a father, a grandfather, our center, our heart, our compass, our north. You are faith that moves mountains and love that never fails. You are the friend to the lonely widow, the one who brings comfort to the hurting, truth to the lost, Jesus to the unbeliever. Your body may rust. It will rust, as it is well worn with use, worn with all these 84 years you've lived. But what Neil Young didn't know is that the rust doesn't touch what's on the inside. Your body will eventually burn out or fade away. No matter how many nights I keep watch, I know I can't stop it. But I do know that what will be left of you is and always will be precious and valuable and worthy, remarkable, irreplaceable. It was once you who moved snow in the middle of the night. Now it is someone else. And someday someone else's daughter will be keeping watch while her father lies in a hospital bed, holding on with his tight grip to this life, one foot in both worlds, hoping she has the strength for both of them. Thanks for tuning in today. I know it's heavy, but it's life. You can go to kellybargabas.com to listen to all past episodes or to reach out to me. You can also find this podcast anywhere that podcasts can be found: Google, Apple, Amazon. So please like it, review it, subscribe. That would really help me out. And until we meet again, take care.